You said that Red Dead Redemption 2, in your opinion, is the best thing you've ever done. I think there's a strong case to be made that it's the greatest game of all time. What are the elements that make that game truly great, do you think?
I think you had an incredibly strong team working together that was very experienced, that had basically been in place since somewhere between 2001 and 2006. So it was a long, experienced team. I think we got to spend a smaller group of us working on it from day one, coming up with some weird, wacky ideas that we got to embed in the game, and then we kind of had to follow through with, that I think was helpful. Like, we got to be very creative before it had a full team on it. I think that the cowboy setting is great because it gives a sort of mythic seriousness that sometimes doing stuff in a contemporary setting doesn't allow. I think the closest we got to that kind of seriousness was GTA 4, but it just can't. Once you're setting things in the modern world, they're too frenetic. You can't get some of that slightly, operatic feel that I love, that some people think is maybe a little over the top, but I love this kind of, people searching for meaning within amongst the violence. I think that the West and all of the themes around the West really lend itself to that. So I think that, and then the gunplay was fantastic, and the horses were incredible. So I think you had this combination of kind of technical know-how, a very, very strong team, and really strong material.
Where did you have to go to in your mind, maybe philosophically, maybe spiritually, to be able to create the RDR world? So of course it was based on Red Dead Revolver, but that's a fundamentally different. I mean, that leap into the great mythic story that was Red Dead Redemption 1, and then even more so Red Dead Redemption 2. That was unlike anything you or maybe anyone has ever created in video games.
Well, thank you.
So, like, what drugs were involved?
No drugs.
Okay.
No, stop the drugs long before.
Okay.
That's why I did all that work. Had nothing else to do. Open world video games were very good for my mental health in that way. Kept me busy. But Red Dead, I'll give you my version. The games are made by big teams.
Yeah.
So I will give you my human interest version of the story from my perspective only. We made Red Dead Revolver, finished Red Dead Revolver, that being a Capcom game, and they didn't want to finish it, so we finished it, and they released it in Japan, and we released it in the US in, I think, 2004, and decided we would start work on an open world cowboy game for PS3. Didn't think too much more about it, and that was when we had a bunch of other stuff to work on. And slowly, 2005, 2006, the game started to come to life, began to meet with the lead designer, Christian Cantamessa, and thrash out a few ideas and story ideas for the game, and begin to think about some stuff and start thinking about, well, what works for an open world game, what works for a cowboy game. And again, was being lazy or procrastinating.
Can we just, on a small tangent, when you mention you take notes when you're being lazy, what do those notes look like? Are they like doodles?
They look like either a yellow pad or a BlackBerry in those days, or an iPhone in these days. I'll write the subject matter and then just email myself a note. Here's a good idea. And those, or it might be scribbling on a pad. And then I'll assemble, if they're done digitally, then I'll assemble them into one long word file. And then I'll look at them and go, here's an idea, and see if it comes to anything. See if I can aggregate them together and then read through them. If there's anything coherent there. A character like this, a character like that. This would be a funny line. This is a line for the main character. Actually make the main character work like this, or what about this relationship? As you start to just play around with, what about if we start in that place, go to that place, just start to play around with all of the different bits and pieces. And we begun to flesh out some flow for the start of the game, and this idea you'd start in dusty American West, which meant we didn't have to make too many trees, and then go to Mexico, and then come back. And we had a sort of loose flow, and I was really scared of writing any actual dialogue. And I didn't have a clue how to go about it, and it'll come. And then and I could postpone it for ages because we were doing GTA 4, and I kept worrying about it. And then my work was wrapped on GTA 4, but the game wasn't out yet. and we've done a bunch of the marketing stuff, and I had a little window when I wasn't doing much else. And I took a week with my then girlfriend, now wife, who was heavily pregnant with our first child. And we went up to a house upstate and sat there in the, well, she sat there either cooking for me or watching TV or reading. And I went and sat in the room all day, every day, and just sat there and stared at the computer and tried to think about, how can I do this that it doesn't sound ridiculous? How can you write in a cowboy idiom that feels both slightly contemporary, but also gives the game this sort of life and this weight that I want it to have, and think we can get away with? And after about 3 days, it just started to come. And then suddenly I wrote about 9-10 scenes in the next couple of days. And after that, I knew I had it. And it was, I don't know if it was, that was why there was so much about a character caring about his family, because I was just beginning the process of having a family.
Oh,
so I don't know to what extent that bled in there, but I think it bled in there to some extent.
So that was part of the creating the 360-degree characters.
I think so.
Here's this man that is capable, is involved in a lot of violence, but also cares about his family.
He's grown up and is trying to step away from that and be a man, be a grown up. And can he get away from it? And then when he can't get away from it, what's he willing to do to save his family? And that was, I felt, starting to get some idea, feeling just, I mean, she hadn't given birth yet, but I was beginning to grapple with the ideas of, I'm going to become a parent. So I hope some of that, and obviously then I probably didn't write any more for 6 months. So later on I had a child, but certainly for that first bit, I think some of that began to bleed in there.
You got the feeling that you can actually do it. It's true. It's, it could have very easily been ridiculous and not believable, the dialogue between cowboys. And
yes.
I mean, there's probably so much work went into making it feel real and believable, and like that, like a Shakespearean type of drama, but not the cheesy kind.
Well, just wanted it to feel, when they spoke, I mean, I love dialogue. I'm always, I love the sound of words, but just wanted to feel like when they sounded, it didn't sound cheesy. It didn't sound ridiculous. You wanted to hear them speak more. It didn't make you cringe awfully when they spoke. That was at some level, that was all the goal was. And then they felt like this guy was going to go on this life and death odyssey, and you cared about him. You had to care about his wife and child that he left behind, even though you didn't know them.
When did you know how you're going to end Red Dead Redemption 1?
I remember I did a meeting with Christian, the designer. I can't remember what year, probably some point late 2008, early 2009. And we were discussing the last bit and said, I think he's got to die. And he leapt on that idea and went, that's, yes. No, I went, no, it can't work. Games can't work like that. They can't work if he's dead. And then I began to think through, well, if we just technically, it doesn't work because you have to be able to finish all the stuff up. And then began to think through, actually, I think we can make it work if we do it this way. And so he then really pushed for that idea. And it seemed to, I was like, I was still torn. I thought it was clever narratively, but I was torn if it was going to work technically as a piece of game design, but I think it did.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, of course. How do we tell the story of that? Well, so he goes through a lot. John does all the dirty work of hunting down his old gang, and he finally is able to go home and be with his family, be on the ranch, and then the government betrays him and sends troops to kill him, and there is dialogue. I mean, that's just I think the 2 times I shed a tear in video game history for me is that dialogue. I think John talking to his wife, if I vaguely remember, I think he said, "I love you," but he said he didn't, he made it seem like he's going to see her and his son shortly. That dialogue was masterfully done, like a definition of like less is more. It was just so crisp. That, and of course the other one is, again, from memory, Arthur riding his horse and the music is playing. It's very hard not to shed a tear during that. Anyway, the dialogue of John talking to his wife at the end when he's in a barn and is about to walk out to face certain death, Do you remember writing that?
Oh yeah, yeah. But it does again. The actor was so good, and we've already seen a bunch of his work by then.
Yeah.
He was so good at reading those lines that I knew he could give us that you could feel with that point. Like, I think those lines are best when they're really short and punchy. And so I knew he'd be able to make that line sound good.
So you were imagining his voice.
Yeah.
You
And I think all of those actors on Red Dead Redemption 1 were so strong that they really brought that game to life. If them and Rod, the director, hadn't done such a good job, it would have sounded cheesy as hell.
Yeah, you've said that the ending of RDR1 is one of the best things you've been a part of creating. Why? Why is that ending so powerful to you? What does it represent?
I think because for the story to work, I mean, just from a technical challenge, for the story to work, he had to die. But for a game to work, it felt like a challenge to make him die. It was probably the fifth or sixth open world game I'd worked on. And I'd, spent all these years before that working out how these stories worked, how to make them work technically, how to make them feel right, how they interacted with the open form gameplay as best I could. And suddenly we're going to break one of our golden rules, which was at the end of the game, you're freeing the character to go and wrap up all the side stories to play forever. You're not going to be able to do that in this game because the guy's going to be dead, and we're going to have you play as a different character. And the narrative is going to be, if we've done a good job, compelling enough where you're not going to care about that. And or you're going to be upset that he's dead, but you're going to actually have this emotional moment. So I think it was a big risk from a technical perspective for us to do that, and then it worked. So I think that was something that was full of fear, and it worked. It worked out okay. I mean, I think people were really upset and angry at us for doing it because they didn't think it was going to happen. But I think they also had that kind of experience you're describing, which is that kind of creative moment where, transcendent moment with characters in a piece of fiction, which is what we were always aspiring to giving people.
I mean, it's incredible because I don't remember a single video game that has done that before.
Well, I would like to have at the end of GTA 4 killed Nico, but you couldn't do it. The game doesn't work that way. So it was this thing where we hadn't done it, thought about doing it, hadn't done it, and then going, well, let's do it. Let's take the risk and do it. We can't do it. Let's try it, and it worked.
Yeah. What about the decision with the son? John give so much effort to make sure that Jack doesn't end up in a life of violence. And then it's very Godfather-like. He's dragged back into it through revenge.
That was also, the game still had to work as a game. Whether that was the right ending, 100% the best ending from a pure storytelling perspective, I don't know. But I know that we had to make the game work.
Oh, interesting.
So it was, I think it kind of worked in that way where Jack can't escape. But I always also wanted a version of it where Jack did escape, but that wasn't, both were interesting to me.
Can you just dig in a little deeper? Like, what do you mean for the game to work? It's such a direct, it's like a Kubrick talking about, for this movie to work, it has to have, because from my perspective, I just think about the story. What's the technical aspect for the game to work?
The mechanical experience is, you have an avatar you control, and the games don't really end, and you have to be able to wander around the world and do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the game, you had to be able to wander around with your fairly limited set of features, which is you can run up to someone and punch them, or run up to someone and shoot them, or run up to someone and rob them, or run up to someone and talk to them, and that's or run up and jump on a horse, or do all this other stuff. In order for the game still to be fun and people to get this full 360-degree experience with it, they had to, if they wanted 100% the game, as opposed to just finishing the story, you have to have an avatar to do that stuff with. Mm-hmm. So that was the sort of challenge of Jack's character / wrapping up the story as Jack.
Although there's real power for the avatar to end, the finiteness.
Yeah, both the Red Deads, you obviously change avatar. Mm-hmm. Which we got, and then did it again. I think there's something interesting about that moment when you change from one character to another, because they are you and they're not you, and then just suddenly you're someone else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was really shaken by that experience, but it's a beautiful experience. It's like an unforgettable experience. And what else can video games possibly reach for? That's to create that experience. That's what great films do. That's what great books do.
It's that. I mean, it's that and the world building in games. I think the experience of being in this fake place and then taking on these narrative adventures. When that combines, you've got the amazing experience.
So who do you think is the best character you've ever created in RDR? So to me, I think definitively Arthur from Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best character ever created in video games.
Thank you.
Ever. I think there's not even I mean, John will be the same, which is hilarious to say, but like those are John will be a close second, but Arthur is definitively, and you've talked about in that interview, you said that a lot of video games work on the same premise, that you start as a weak person and end up as a strong superhero. But what if you start as a tough guy? Someone who already is very strong, someone that is emotionally confident of his place in the world. Arthur's journey is not about becoming a superhero because he's almost one at the start, but it's about an intellectual roller coaster when his worldview gets taken apart. So it's very different than the normal journey of a character.
Yeah, in a game.
In a game.
I wanted to reverse it.
Yeah.
So there were a couple other themes that matched that. So they're guys from the Wild West, but they're being pushed ever further east. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like an anti-Western, an Eastern. You're traveling east. You're traveling into civilization. And I don't think I would have been grappling with those ideas earlier in my career. Because I was, this idea of getting a different kind of strength and a different kind of weakness was interesting.
What about the component of mortality? Of a character facing his own mortality over a prolonged period, sort of just realize the prospect of like real sort of fear of death, realization of death.
Yeah, I thought that was really
part of the story.
Really a fun thing to play with. John dies in Red Dead 1 and wanted to top that with Red Dead 2 or do that in a different way. And so the idea that John's death is fairly sudden. And so if he's got this long drawn out death, and then I'd always been obsessed by TB. As diseases go, it's a great literary device, because it is this long drawn out slow death, but in which you are also getting weaker. And my grandfather actually had TB before they invented antibiotics and was sent to a sanatorium just after he'd had his child, my father, and survived, but only 3 of them out of like 35 survived. So I was always captivated and by TB as an illness. It felt like it was an interesting thing to play around with as an idea, this guy getting weaker who felt like he was immortal and essentially was immortal. He was the protagonist in a video game. He could not die. And suddenly he is becoming mortal. And but that helps him see stuff. I thought that was a different way of doing a lead character in a game.
Yeah. Do you think it's the greatest character you've ever created?
I think he's the best lead character. The lead characters are different from the side characters. And I think he's the most rounded and works the best. Him and Nico are the two I like. They were the two most ambitious. So for me, it's always sort of a toss up. But then I loved all the stuff like the art team did such an amazing job. It was their idea with the journal and that kind of stuff. The way that all the features worked into Arthur's character, I thought that was he was really rounded. He worked in lots of different ways really well. I loved like his flawed relationship with his old girlfriend, things like that. All the side, the bits that kind of turned up around him.
So you also like the side characters. You like the flavor, of the full cast. What are some of the favorites you've created? I'm sure the one you're currently working on, Nigel Dave. If you called him a side character.
Well, he's not a protagonist. He's like he's a god, not a character.
Sure.
So he's not him. I'm enjoying. I love Dutch. It was partly because we wrote a few lines for him for the first game. And the actor did such an amazing job that when he spoke, it just came to me, all of their backstory, which I'd been playing around with by that point anyway, a little bit in my head, but I knew it was this bigger gang stuff. And then I sort of saw exactly who he was. And so that felt like he felt like a living character to me.
And we should say that Dutch is kind of like maybe a little bit of a godlike figure.
Yeah.
In both of the Red Dead Redemption games. And he's the leader of the gang. and there's a father-son relationship with Dutch, with with Arthur, with John. I mean, there's a family feeling to the gang that you explore all of those dynamics, and then the feeling of betrayal, and Arthur facing tuberculosis. You're going against the family, going against the father, because he is transforming his sense of the world, of morality, of all those kinds of things. So all the kind of very Shakespearean drama is right there, and Dutch is a prominent godlike figure through all of that. Also flawed himself, also a man of good and evil in that framework that they're operating under.
He's just drowning in his ego at the end.
Yeah,
his ego gets the better of him. I think but there was something flawed but beautiful in his idealism when he was younger, and that's mostly off camera. And then just always been, as an individual, I've always been very susceptible to charming people, and he's charming. And so I always I can see how people get captivated by charming people. And the idea here was a very charming person, and the roads run out for him.
I personally am afraid of how much I love human beings and how susceptible I am to charm and charisma.
Yeah.
Because it can cloud your judgment about human nature.
Completely. And that's what's happened with him. And it ended up clouding his judgment about himself. He kind of fell for his own rubbish.
Yeah. But also it clouded Arthur's judgment.
Oh, completely. Arthur was completely, platonically in love with him. He was worshipping him. He'd given up his power to him. And then I think for Arthur, the journey is retaking that power in the moment of dying. That's what I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's truly tragic for Arthur to be losing his identity, lifelong identity, and the sense of belonging, and losing his life at the same time. In facing the mortality, he is realizing that he's not, all of it has been a lie.
But he gets to do some, it depends on what the choices you make, but he gets to do some good.
Yes.
And so he gets his moment of redemption.
Just a little bit, but realizing your whole life, you've been living not a good life.
Yes.
You've been not a good man.
Isn't that what we're all afraid of?
I guess it's never too late to change your ways. So the biggest, most important question, primary, central to the reason we're talking today, the number one question from the internet, it is so ridiculous, but I must ask, have you seen Gavin? Who is Gavin? So for more context, there's a guy named Nigel in Red Dead Redemption 2 who's frantically searching for a mystery man named Gavin throughout the game. This has become one of the biggest mysteries amongst the interwebs, the RDR fan base. So the theories include, theory one is it's a split personality disorder. Nigel himself is Gavin. So the evidence is the letter for this theory that has some evidence that maybe due to trauma, the split personality disorder was created. Gavin was created inside Nigel's mind. Theory two is Gavin is dead and Nigel's simply in denial. Theory three is that it's just a troll and Rockstar intentionally created an unsolvable mystery to drive players crazy. I also heard theory four is Gavin is the strange man. So there's this fascinating character, the strange man, this supernatural character that has a presence in RDR1 and a little bit in RDR2 also. Yeah. So which theory is closest to the truth?
Not 3 or 4. Somewhere in my mind, somewhere between 1 and 2. Yeah, I just loved the way he shouted Gavin. It just amused me. So at some level, it probably is trolling in that we didn't want it to be a totally clear mystery. You wanted it to have a little bit of adventure to it. But it was meant to be, without ever fully being explained, that Gavin's not there anymore. Gavin's either gone home, Gavin's left him, and we were going to keep exploring that idea. He was going to reappear in some way or other.
Did you have any idea how much imagination, excitement, and curiosity that little interaction would inspire in people?
Yes and no. I mean, no, you never know what people are going to find amusing in these big games. And a lot of it comes down to acting as well. The guy was just funny when he said Gavin. It was just funny. But There was a ped in Red Dead Redemption 1 that everyone was obsessed by. And I really wasn't expecting that. So we try and put a few characters in. I mean, Gavin was supposed to be amusing. I thought he was amusing. But you never know what people are going to get obsessed by. There are other characters I think are funny and the people don't even notice them, or they see them in a completely different way.
Did you have a part in writing the letter?
Yeah, I can't remember if I wrote it or either I wrote it or Mike wrote it or we both wrote it. I really can't remember, to be honest with you. But yeah, I certainly would have edited it and Mike might have written it or I might have written it. I really can't remember.
It's so fascinating because that little piece of writing, of course, you have thousands of pages.
Yeah,
that little piece of writing gets like analyzed.
Oh, but we certainly talked about it in depth. And if Mike was here, I'd ask it. He might remember. I can't. We do so much of those things, and I loved the use of letters in Red Dead to tell all these weird backstories, and some became very clear, and some were still a little kind of opaque. But the general vibe was there was no Gavin. Either there was no Gavin, or he'd long since left. So it's kind of a split personality, and then we were going to over subsequent games that provide more information.
So in some sense, you yourself don't quite know. You kind of have an idea. So he could like which way do you lean more, theory 1 or 2? Is he dead and the guy and Nigel's in denial, or is there real communication going inside his head?
No, Gavin existed. So it wasn't that he was a split personality. And the only thing we hadn't really decided was in a future game, were we going to reveal that Gavin was dead or was Gavin going to turn up having long since abandoned this maniac? That was what we're still playing around with. I think the idea was that he was never going to meet Gavin in this game.
It's just fascinating because you have to think about all of that. You have to write all of that. You have to have those discussions. You have to have those debates,
and it has to feel fresh. That was like what we've done before. Constantly looking as you do. I think I did. Somewhere between 15 and 20 of these games. Got to do stuff that's new. It can't repeat itself too much.
I mean, we also live in the age of the internet. Just like you realize, there's like millions of people worrying about where and who Gavin is.
Thank God.
It's like it's fascinating that they're having. Think about people reading like James Joyce or something, and thinking about like breaking apart Ulysses, and thinking about like arguing about different interpretations of it. To me, that in itself is also beautiful.
Yeah, we want the side mysteries to be solvable up to a point, but you still want these discussions.
Yeah,
and you want, but as long as it feels tonally appropriate for this whole big sort of Shaggy Dog story experience you're making. Which Gavin was just about, and he was so weird, and it just was intrinsically, there was just something funny about an English person screaming Gavin. I don't know why.
Yeah, some of that humor. I mean, there's certainly in Red Dead Redemption there's humor, but there's a lot of it in Grand Theft Auto, and it's hard to put into words why that's funny, why it becomes meme, why it becomes viral, because it's just funny.
I know why I think it's funny, but what I'm not good at doing, at least, is going, this thing will become really popular online and this other thing won't. Yeah. You can create this bunch of 50 different side things that people might get captivated by, and you just do not know what they're going to respond to.
How do you know when something's funny? Is it you just feel it?
I know what I think is funny. It's
you just giggle at it yourself.
Just because it's ridiculous as well. That was just there's nothing funny about a dude shouting Gavin a lot. Yeah. He just said it in I just thought it might be funny, and he just said it in such a funny way.
Yeah,
and then it just became funny. Like we often have those side characters, and they're not that funny, and I think they're going to be hysterical. And then you put them in the game, and they're fine, but they're not amazing. That guy just brought that stuff to life.
Yeah. And there's a backstory too. I mean, Londoner and not.
Yeah, I think that was what Just there's something sometimes fun. An English person saying the name Gavin is quite funny.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
So about the strange man, aka the Man in Black, is there some element with Michael and the therapist in Grand Theft Auto 5? Like, who is the strange man?
Well, the strange man was someone we came up with quickly. We made Red Dead 1, and we're making Red Dead 1, and we'd made this, we felt, quite compelling story and quite interesting open world. But and we'd already made a bunch of Grand Theft Autos, obviously. But unfortunately, we'd taken out the machine guns because it was a cowboy game, apart from the big fixed position ones. And we'd taken out the cars, and we'd taken out the city and large numbers of pedestrians. So we essentially had a game about a dude riding a horse around the desert. And it was quite boring. And so we then started filling it with content, and we filled it with these, and having to improvise. And we filled it with these things we call random events that would be these sort of mocap moments that you could interact with. And the designers did an amazing job with those. They were really fun. But there was not enough of them. And then we felt we needed more story because the story was perhaps a little short. So we kind of, quite late in development, started putting in almost like these RPG type content where you go and meet someone. And the way we thought of them was they were like short stories. So you go and meet someone, they'd set you a slow problem, like go and collect me 15 bunches of flowers. And when you came back, it would resolve your story. And so the one would go and get them for my bride, and you come back and the bride's dead. We tried to make them like these short stories with a sting in the tail. And he came out, as I was trying to come up with ideas for those, as just this weird character. And then we built him a bit into the story where he would unlock as you worked your way through and be a commentary on what you were doing. So he was meant to be a kind of manifestation of your, shadow, your karma, the devil, somewhere, just saw the world. And then we built out his backstory over time. And decide, so in Red Dead 2, you could interact with him again or not really interact with him, but he was there and he was meant to be, something I suppose any creative is scared of, an artist who's kind of sold his soul to the devil. And that slowly revealed itself.
There is a connection between the main character and is it like a Jungian shadow type of situation?
Well, it's sort of, because he knows what you're up to. The connection is, and what's never really made clear is, does he know this about everybody? Like, is he following you, or is he able, because of the pact he's made with evil forces, able to do this for everybody? And I don't think we necessarily ever clarify that. He's certainly able to do it for you.
I mean, the narrative-wise, there's techniques to reveal a kind of self-reflection analysis of the main character's thoughts. I mean, that's why I brought up the therapist with Michael. That was a really powerful, interesting thing to do in the video game. Like, I don't think I've seen that. That's such a cool. I mean, there's a Sopranos element there with a therapist.
A little bit, yeah.
I really love an opportunity for a character to just self-reflect through that technique.
But it also changed depending on what you'd done.
Yes.
So it was sort of slightly. It wasn't as interactive as it could be, but it was slightly interactive or slightly responsive to what you'd done. So I felt it was still valid video game content because it was living up to a point. And I just thought the character, Dr. Friedlander, was just funny because he was awful. So it was like LA, you're in therapy, it's very LA, but it's also very LA, he wants to write a book and betray you, which felt like a good twist. And he felt like a Grand Theft Auto therapist, but just like the idea of making the player in a game, and games are intrinsically kind of physical. And, you walk, you punch things, you run around, you drive cars, you shoot people, whatever. These kind of physical fantasies, trying to put them into a slightly more reflective or metaphysical state for a moment, I think can be really fun.
I think, to me, one of the most surprising things about Red Dead Redemption, about video games, that Red Dead Redemption showed is how much value for storytelling is insanely specific, intricate details in the story, but also visually. It just added to the feeling that the world is real. So I have to ask, what are some of your favorite insanely specific, intricate details in RDR? I'll give you some options. Internet's favorite is horse testicles shrinking in cold weather.
Those guys did an amazing job on those.
Yeah. I mean, and there must have been a meeting, and there must have been engineers and graphics designers,
just artists, modelers. I don't think it was that hard.
Okay,
enough of that pun.
Thank you for that. Arthur's hair and beard grow in real time. So gun maintenance matters. Firearms get dirty and perform worse over time. Animal carcasses decompose realistically.
Yeah, they feel like they do.
That's still extremely rare in video games. That the temporal aspect.
Yes.
That permeates through time. NPCs remembering you.
That's the best. I mean, that's the thing I love. It playing around with a lot of stuff in the new games around that. 'Cause I think it's super interesting.
It's really
to make
powerful, right?
really interesting. I think it's a really fun way of giving you kind of narrative content that is also systemic and procedural.
Yeah. Is it technically really difficult to do for the game to feel like it remembers you?
I think with modern tech, it's not that hard, but there's a lot of stuff you need to track to make it interesting.
Yeah, to have a memory.
Mhm.
So that's really powerful. The mud physics. So Arthur's boots get muddy and leave actual tracks. I mean, that's just incredible. Really, really incredible.
You know, we made a dusty game. Red Dead 1 is a super dusty game. The problem with Cowboys is that if you've tried to make a greatest hits of the cowboy game and then you've got to make a sequel, you've got to come up with different geographies. So that's why the game starts in the snow. So we wanted a game that had snow and mud because those were things you hadn't really seen in Red Dead 1. And then the challenge is how do you make mud good in a game? And guys did an amazing job.
I mean, the snowstorm that starts the game, RDR2, I don't remember last time I've experienced anything like it, but you felt it. I don't know how the hell you do that. It's not just graphics, it's everything together. I suppose some of the dialogue is really
What's
important
the
for
acting? They feel cold.
Yeah, that's right.
And they feel desperate. That was that feeling of sort of
Yes.
exodus, like you're running away from something that gives the game sort of energy at the start.
And it was at night. Oh man, it was just
And there was a big
masterfully
group of
done.
them. The other first game you start off
Yes.
as a lone wolf, suddenly you're in this big group. So it felt very different.
In Arthur's body, bullet wounds persist. So that temporal consistency, that's really important. And underweight Arthur looks gone, and overweight Arthur gets a gut and fuller face. Again, those like decisions that you make reveal themselves in the game across time, and they're consistent. I don't know. I did not see many games do that. It must be difficult to do, but to give that level of care to the details in that way across time and for specific graphical representations of things is incredible.
Yeah.
Do you have favorites? Where you were first like this is amazing.
I think all of it. I think the way to me, the thing that I would care about most was the way the whole thing sat together. The fact that each of those, they all feel like they belong together with each other. You made this cohesive, very, quote unquote, realistic for a video game experience, and all the details feel like they mesh.
Well, for me, everything about the horse. For a lot of people. Testicle shrinking included.